Hey, folks. Welcome back to Sorry What. I'm Jason, your storyteller. Today we have a second part of the story, so grab a coffee and let's start. Aaron. I wanted to drive back to the park. I like being outside, especially when I need to burn off energy, but I'd left without a jacket, and it was the last days of fall. So I went to the mall and walked the circuit on each level. Twice. Then I grabbed a slice of pepperoni from Slice Brothers. It wasn't healthy, but screw it. I had all the answers that mattered. Tilly ducked Randy, but she wasn't planning to run off with him. She seemed sincere that she still loved me. But she ducked Randy several times and a stranger once, so how could I really tell? And the frequency with Randy was accelerating, though 3 data points wasn't nearly enough for high confidence. But practice does make perfect. They were probably becoming more aware of what stoked their desires for sex with each other, and consciously or unconsciously they were likely doing more of those things. Tilly seemed genuinely shocked that other people knew of her interludes, but the fact remained that other people knew she cheated on me. That wasn't huge, but it was a consideration. No one wants to look like the fool. If we stayed married, I'd see those people from time to time. She'd gone unprotected at least once too. Clearly not thinking about her husband waiting faithfully at home. She claimed to love me, but her actions made the implications of that love cloudy to me. Everything I'd heard pointed to casual, opportunistic sex on her part, which I couldn't really understand. I understood the principle, but for the life of me, I just didn't get how someone thinks sex isn't important enough to limit to an intimate relationship. I wouldn't judge others if they'd come to an explicit agreement with their partner, but my partner never secured that agreement. We talked about exclusivity early on, and we agreed. But either we didn't define it very well, or Tilly felt like there was a loophole somewhere I couldn't see. She wanted to move forward, to stay married, but it sounded like a no harm no foul thing, that the focus was moving me past my pain, essentially ignoring accountability for her transgressions. Probably because she didn't think of them as transgressions. And now what was I going to do? I loved Tilly. Always have. She and I were in sync about everything. Well, make that almost everything. We were intertwined. Separating us would be incredibly painful and incredibly difficult on just about every level there is. We were best friends. We had young kids together. Families that we loved and who loved us. Same with friends. A house. A share of a vacation cabin. Investments. Retirement plans. And all the dreams we shared. Divorce would suck. Big time. The process and the aftermath both. I couldn't see a thing that would be good about divorce. But once it was done, I could rebuild my confidence and maybe find a partner better aligned with my values. That wasn't a certain outcome by any means, but I was a decent guy, earnest, hardworking, reliable. There had to be women who appreciated that enough to stay true. Tilly's betrayal cut me very deep. I was at a complete and total loss for how she thought it was permissible to duck around on me. And while she seemed genuinely empathetic to my pain, I never heard her apologize for ducking those guys. She just said it didn't mean anything. The pain I felt last night was muted now, but I knew it would return again and again. The feelings of inadequacy, of foolishness, of rejection were cried out, exhausted, but they were gathering again, and when they gained enough strength they'd be back full force. I hoped those feelings would dull over time, but I didn't share Tilly's confidence that they could be healed. And I knew I'd never trust her not to stray again. Trust. Every relationship sits on a foundation of trust. Will you do what you tell me you will do? We take chances with our time, our money, our feelings when we believe in someone, when we trust them. I had trusted Tilly completely. I'd honored my commitments to her. She hadn't done the same to me. That tilted the scales of our marriage heavily to her side. And I couldn't think of any way to restore the balance. I wasn't going to have an affair. Sex to me was as much emotional as physical, and so if I was to have an affair, it would mean my commitments to Tilly no longer mattered. And that's how I saw Tilly's ducking around. As her ending her commitments to me. I wanted her to convince me that we should stay married. I needed her to do that because I couldn't see it on my own. I needed to talk to her again. I drove home. Tilly. I'd taken a shower after Aaron left. I ate a slice of toast with the rhubarb jam his mother had sent at the end of summer. Then I sat at the kitchen table and waited. I tried not to overthink our situation, but my mind still raced. I just had to find a way through to Aaron. For me, for him, for our kids. How could I get him to see that the important thing was our marriage, our family? Sex with Randy and the salesman was trivial in comparison. Not even just in comparison, I never thought about it once it was over. It had been a couple hours since he walked out when I heard the garage door again. I quickly put my plate, knife, and coffee cup into the dishwasher and hurried into the family room. We were not going to have another conversation sitting at the kitchen table. Our family room was set up with a sectional shaped like an L, and the TV and shelves holding all of our family's important books and knickknacks faced the open end. We didn't have any other seating space in the room. I sat in the middle of the sectional, so no matter where he sat, Aaron would be within my reach. Feeling my love through my touch would help him see my devotion to him and to our family. Till. In here. Aaron hesitated when he saw me, then came and sat in the seat nearest to the doorway. I smiled at him. I couldn't help it. I love this man. He gave me a perfunctory nod, and then looked away. His pain radiated off of him. I reached over and gently laid my hand on his shoulder. He tensed, but he didn't pull away. I squeezed and then brought my hand back. Little steps. Where did you go? The mall. Can I get you something to drink? No, I'm good. Okay. I looked at him, waiting, but he didn't raise his gaze. What are you thinking, Han? Aaron shrugged. I just don't understand. Why? I told you. It was nothing, honey. Not anything at all. Certainly nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, Till. Everything. No, Aaron. You were here, I was there. And it meant nothing to me at all. He nodded ruefully. And there it is, I guess. The difference I never noticed before. When we're not in the same place, I still think of us being together. Inseparable, even when distance intervenes. And how does that make sense, Han? We can't be inseparable when we're not together. I smiled at him as I said, I thought literalism was your domain. You're joking about this. Teasing was always our way of lightening the mood, but we were much farther apart than I feared. That realization jolted me. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do here, Air. I'm at a loss to show you how much this doesn't matter. I feel like our marriage is in jeopardy. I see that you're hurting, and that makes me hurt. But I don't know what to say to make it better. Why did you do it? He was so fixated on the sex that he wasn't hearing what I was saying. So I repeated myself. I told you, honey. I was horny, Randy was horny, the circumstances were right, and it just happened. It doesn't mean anything. Aaron sighed, and that seemed to release all of his energy. He normally sat straight up, but now he just sagged. It doesn't mean anything to you. It means a hell of a lot to me. Why? I almost shouted in my frustration. It didn't involve you at all. If you hadn't heard Ted say something last night, you would still be happy with our marriage, right? He shrugged. Yes, you would. You know that. And I am still that same woman, still your wife, still devoted to your happiness and our family. I am exactly the same as I was yesterday, when you were happy with me. I don't understand how you can't see that. And I don't understand how you can't see that while you might be the same woman that you were yesterday. I thought you were the same woman I married, before you ducked someone other than me. You promised to be exclusive, Till, and you weren't. You promise. But I have been. I've never loved anyone but you, Aaron. Ever. That was true when we dated, when we were engaged, when we were married. Every single day since I met you, I've never loved anyone else. I thought our talk was finally getting somewhere, but Aaron just looked more and more sad. He nodded, but it was a resigned nod. He moved to get up, but I moved faster, clasping my arms around him. I pushed my forehead into his shoulder. No. Stay with me. We can fix this. We have to fix this. He relaxed enough to stay seated, but he stayed tense enough to keep from molding into me. There's nothing to fix, Till. I can see that our marriage has always been this way. What's that supposed to mean? To me, our commitments to each other were total. Emotional. Intellectual. Spiritual. And physical. You never saw it the same way. You're emotionally committed to me, maybe even intellectually and spiritually. But not physically. We were never in balance, Till. I thought we were, but we weren't. And I don't see how we can get it in balance. But we are in balance, honey. I know you love me. I feel it every single day. And I love you just as much. No, you don't. Or you wouldn't have ducked around. That again. Aaron was a smart guy. Why couldn't he see it? I needed him to see it. What I did with Randy and that other guy really did have nothing to do with you. As soon as it was over, it was out of my mind. I don't care about them at all. I do care about you. I love you more than anyone I've ever met. You are my perfect partner. Tilly, I carry around our marriage wherever I go. It's you to me, to my identity. You and the kids, but especially you, are always foremost in my thoughts whenever I have to make a decision. I choose everything with you in mind. Everything. When I decide what to get for lunch, I think about what we planned for dinner. When someone asks me if I want tickets to a game, I check my calendar to see if we have plans. Then I think about what you might want to do with me during that time, and only if there's no possible conflict do I think about whether or not I want to go. It's automatic. But when you were deciding to duck some other man, where was the thought of me? Best case he didn't think of me at all, because if you did and you still went ahead with it, then you'd just be a calculating witch. And I don't think you're that. Calculating witch. That put me on my heels. That hurt more than anything I could imagine. Tears came to my eyes. He was so far off the mark. I did love him. More than anything else in the world. How could I convince him? Aaron, you have to know how much I love you. You have to. Open your heart, my love. You'll see the truth there. I don't think you want to see what's in my heart right now, Till. Trust your feelings, Air. Look into your heart, and you'll see the truth of how much I love you. Love isn't the only feeling in there, Tilly. It's not even the most prominent. Hurt is in there too. Anger, fear, and grief. A lot of grief. But why? I squeezed him again, but he remained sitting stiffly. Let me in, Air. Let me in. We can heal this. We can. I'll heal, and you'll undoubtedly be part of that, but I don't see it happening right now. We're out of balance, Till. And until I can figure out if we can ever get back in balance, I can't be with you. He gently pulled my arms loose, then stood. I'm going to pack a few things. I'll let you know where I end up. This was such a nightmare. I watched him walk away, and his whole body looked defeated. We had to fix it. But he had to want to fix it, and it didn't look like he did. I was frustrated, upset, scared. How could I get through to him? Aaron. I went back to the residence inn. I texted Tilly when I checked back in. I had listened to her, and I heard everything she said, and didn't say. To Tilly, the emotional commitment was all that mattered. She truly believed that sex with the other guys was essentially meaningless, something that happened far away from our marriage. She came home believing she was still true to me because that sex never intruded on her feelings for me or our kids or our family. The sex was distinct, outside our commitments and our plans. I never twigged to her infidelity because she had no guilt about it. To her it was just sex, and no different than going out for a drink with friends. But that didn't match at all what I believed a marriage to be. I was open to reconciliation, but I just didn't see how we could get there. I was never going to cheat on Tilly, so the only way to move forward with her was to accept her betrayal and forgive her for it. And that would always leave the scales of our marriage tilted. Combine that with her lack of remorse and her philosophy that there were exceptions to everything in life, and I had no confidence that she wouldn't do it again. And I knew I couldn't withstand that. She didn't believe she betrayed me, but I felt it, and the pain it spawned seemed bottomless. How do you process something like your partner seeking sex elsewhere? The person whose love is the most important thing to you. You've built every aspect of your life around her and your marriage to her, committing to her for life by creating children and a home to share. You trust her with your fears and insecurities, knowing she loves you in spite of them, and that love manifests itself by sharing your bodies with each other. It's a tangible expression of your mutual love. You know she loves only you because she makes love with only you. Until you discover that safeguarding and respecting your love isn't that important to her after all. Until you know that you're not enough for her. Until you know that you didn't rate a thought when she felt horny after a professional success. Until you know that she wouldn't sacrifice a passing physical thrill for your marriage. The disconnect between your expectations and her behavior is immense, and the pain that the disconnect births is proportionally mammoth. I screamed my emotional agony into my pillows again that night. And for many nights that followed. It was the only way I could release it. And it left me exhausted. I talked to my boss and explained in broad terms that my marriage seemed to be ending, and that I needed time away to manage it. Maxine had always been empathetic, and this time was no different. She just asked me to keep an eye on email while I did what I needed to do. We did go out with the girls to celebrate Tilly's promotion, and the kids' excitement helped us keep the dinner light and mostly normal. We went home together, and Tilly and I did our usual nighttime prep with the girls. Once they were in bed and read to and kissed several times, I grabbed my coat. When are you coming home, Air? I don't know. I miss you. Yeah, same. Can we talk about it? I don't think there's anything left to say. I know what you think. Now I just need to figure out what I think. Come home, honey. Let me work it through with you. Like we always do. You know we're a great team. That wouldn't work this time, Till. I did go to the house after work every night and in the morning on my days to get the girls ready. We wanted to keep things as normal as possible for as long as possible. Weekends were harder, but we managed. I got there before Annie and Kiley woke up. They didn't get to surprise us in bed any longer, but with everything else being constant for them they didn't seem to notice. I felt myself moving away from Tilly though, and she could feel it too. She implored me to return home, tried to convince me that we could move forward together like we always had. She finally surprised me one night after we got the girls down. Let's go to counseling, honey. We're stuck and we need help. Otherwise I'm afraid you'll just leave us for good. I thought it was interesting that she thought I was leaving her when I felt she'd never invested in our marriage like I had. My second thought was that our disparate perspectives were an excellent reason for trying therapy. She found a counselor, and after a quick look at online reviews and her credentials, I agreed. Pratishtha Bandari was an earthy woman, heavesive, but with eyes that were bright and active, and a soothing voice that held only a hint of an accent. Her manner wasn't exactly direct, taking time to explore her thoughts and feelings about whatever matter was under discussion, but she didn't shy away from asking questions that attacked the heart of the matter, once the foundational work was complete. And she was very articulate and precise in her language, especially around emotions. It was near the end of our second session when Pratishtha got us to the sticking point. We'd recounted our history together and my recent awareness of Tilly's infidelity. There were no surprises for either of us, but Pratishtha was getting the contours of our marriage fixed in her mind. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that you, Tilly, feel like your promises to Aaron are intact because the sex you had with other men didn't affect your emotional commitment to him. Tilly nodded and smiled. Yes. And you, Aaron, feel like she betrayed those promises because to you they included physical fidelity, not just emotional fidelity. Yes. And Tilly, you don't think you need forgiveness because you don't think you did anything to be forgiven for. Tilly frowned. No, I hurt Aaron. And I feel bad about that. I want his forgiveness for hurting him. So you're sorry that you had sex with other men because it hurt Aaron? Exactly. I'm very sorry about that. I never wanted to hurt my husband. Aaron, how do you feel about what Tilly's saying? I know that she's sorry about hurting me. She's not a monster. She knows that she hurt me, badly, and she's been clear that she regrets my pain. But she's never apologized for those acts that created that pain, because she doesn't think they were wrong. That's not true. Tilly exclaimed. I do regret them. I didn't want to hurt you. Tilly, it's Aaron's turn to share what he's thinking and feeling. You'll get your chance too. No, I'm done. She regrets them only because they hurt me. She doesn't see them as betrayal in and of themselves. I do. And that tells me she might do it again. I don't know if I can get past the pain now. It would kill me if I faced it again. But I wouldn't. Tilly, you're who you are. A wonderful, smart, warm-hearted woman. But you believe in exceptions, in carve-outs. No absolutes, right? But this is a hard absolute for me. It always has been, which is why it hurts so much to know you don't hold our marriage the same way I hold it. And if I have to protect myself against you, well, that's not the kind of marriage I want. You're not a bad person, Tilly, but I don't think you're the right person for me to be married to. Honey, please give me a chance. I can do this. Maybe you can. But do you really believe that there won't be any possible exceptions for the rest of your life? That there's absolutely no circumstance where you'd consider having sex with another man? Tilly has always been honest. Maybe not always full disclosing, but honest. And I saw in her eyes the exact moment she thought of a possible exception. And she saw in my eyes that I saw it, and I think she knew in that very moment that we were done. Tilly, I can't believe we're divorced. Aaron and I were soulmates, absolutely perfect for each other, but we aren't married any longer. I was there every step of the way from that awful night at the hotel, and every day it seemed we just fell farther and farther down the rabbit hole. I still can't really make sense of what happened. And for the smallest of reasons. I never gave anyone else the slightest bit of love I had for Aaron. Never. I thought for sure the counseling would work for us. Pratishtha got us to see our disconnect, but where I was sure we could overcome it, Aaron couldn't see a way forward. And I think he just stopped trying. I pleaded and pleaded with him to come home, to make love with me, to trust in the cocoon of love we had built for us and our children, but he was resolute. I see possibilities. I always have. And I'm creative. So when Aaron asked me if I could ever see an exception to remaining monogamous, of course I could think of one. Actually, I came up with several almost immediately. Stranded after a plane crash. Coerced to save Annie's or Kiley's or Aaron's life. The couples swap with Aaron's consent. And maybe that thunderbolt that sometimes happens. I'm sure I could have come up with more. But they were exceptions. By definition, the probability of them happening was extremely low. I tried to explain that. But the chance is not zero, Till. And with the addition of each possible exception, the total risk of you ducking someone else again increases. I can't live with it hanging over our marriage. I can't. You've devastated me, Tilly. I have no reserves to survive another blow. And so he devastated me in turn. I was depressed for many months after he filed for divorce, but I had to put on my big girl pants every day to keep our girls going, and to win clients for our firm. I didn't have the luxury of moping around, and since I am a proponent of the fake it till you make it approach to problems, I put on my best face every day. But the nights in my bed alone were hard, and when Aaron had the girls, we shared custody, splitting weeks between us. I ate many pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. And cried. A lot. Aaron wasn't faring any better. I knew him so well, and I could see his profound sadness. His jovial, easygoing manner had evaporated, and he looked so pensive and even lost whenever he wasn't talking to someone. But no matter how often I implored him to come home to me, he wouldn't. I finally realized he needed to return to me on his own. Nothing I could say would make a difference. And maybe that's when I saw how much I had really hurt him. He'd always looked to me for counsel. He trusted my opinions, at least before. And now he didn't. Randy was long gone by the time I was ready to date. He was divorced as well. His wife Trish heard Aaron very clearly that night. Randy was caught flat-footed, and he couldn't spin the news in any way that helped him. He had much less success with his divorce than we did with ours. Aaron and I parted amicably and we stayed friendly for the kids, but Trish went hardcore scorched earth on Randy. They had small kids too, but she got custody and he got the bill. He left our firm when a sales manager position opened up at a competitor, but he had to move to Chicago for it. I felt as badly for him as for me. The sex wasn't worth the price, but I had wondered why it had been so expensive for all concerned. I didn't face any repercussions at work. I told Jim and Frank a sanitized version of the reason for my divorce, and assured them that I wouldn't put the firm at risk again. They let me know they were disappointed, but I was a rainmaker for them, and I'm sure they looked the other way as much for that as for any grace they felt for me. I started dating about a year after the divorce was final. Men began asking me out as soon as the news of my impending divorce started circulating, but it took me that long before I was ready to admit my marriage was probably over. I was feeling very lonely, and so I dipped my toes back into the pool, agreeing to lunch dates with a few different men. I didn't sleep with any of them even though I was very horny. I kept hoping Aaron would come back, and I wanted to be able to tell him I'd been faithful. The irony didn't escape me, not faithful when we were married but faithful when it was over. Sex still didn't matter to me, but it clearly mattered a lot to Aaron, and I wanted to have something of value to give him if he chose to take me back. After another year apart it seemed Aaron had found a center in his life. I didn't know if he was seeing anyone. We didn't discuss dates, and, though I never asked the girls directly, their recaps of their time with Aaron didn't include any women. But he seemed settled when we saw each other, and if he didn't seem exactly happy, then he looked to be at least content. I had given up hope for us at that point, which helped me be open to other people. Which led me to Bob. We met through work. He had a family office, and I sold him on our services. I took him to dinner to celebrate the deal, and then he asked me to dinner to talk more personally. He was a widower of 4 years, about 10 years older than me, with no children. He wasn't opposed to them, his wife hadn't been able to conceive. He grieved for 2 years, then slowly opened his heart. I could relate. Bob mostly healed me. I'll always have the scar from Aaron's rejection, but Bob was tender and thoughtful and funny. He wasn't a handsome man, he was plain, not large or small, not especially noticeable, but his heart was big and warm, and it just wrapped me up. He also saw things in shades of gray, and he said he couldn't imagine how a perfect marriage could be demolished by a couple episodes of meaningless sex. I didn't know how I'd feel if Aaron was the first one of us to move on with a new partner, so I was very nervous before I told him about Bob and me moving in together. Our talk was anticlimactic though. Aaron was gracious. "I'm happy you found someone, Till." He smiled at me, genuinely happy. "You've always had excellent taste in partners, so I'm sure he's a good man." I couldn't help it. I lunged and hugged him, but he tensed in my arms. I sighed inside. He'd never released the hurt I caused him. Bob and I bought a 4-bedroom house near where Aaron and I had lived. We wanted a fresh start. During and after the divorce I'd stayed in our old house to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, and Aaron had purchased a 3-bedroom condo not far away in the same school district. The kids incorporated Bob into our arrangement almost seamlessly, I think largely because he was so easygoing, and because Annie was still a couple years away from adolescent rebellion. I still think about Aaron often. I want him to be happy. I hope he will be one day. I try not to dwell on what could have been, if only. If only he'd been more flexible. If only he'd been more open. If only he'd have let me help him heal from his pain. But then I guess he wouldn't have been Aaron, my perfect partner. My almost perfect partner. Aaron. I'd met Bob, but I'd never spoken to him beyond bland pleasantries when I picked up or dropped off the girls. He seemed like a decent guy, maybe a little boring, which coming from me was a little rich. I was at his house, his and Tilly's house, for Kiley's 8th birthday party, and we were the only 2 men there. Tilly and a couple of other mothers were riding herd on a dozen or so girl berserkers charging around the yard, and neither they nor the kids had need of 2 older guys, so we sat in camp chairs on the patio and watched the frenzy. We covered the twins' travails, handicapped the Vikings' chances, bemoaned the hot spell from the past week, and that pretty much ran us out of innocuous topics. We were quiet a moment or two, sipping our Molsons, when Bob spoke. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Aaron, but how could you let Tilly get away? I mean, look at her. She's beautiful, smart, fun. She's a great mother, an amazing cook, and an incredible lover too. She's the whole package. I'd given it a lot of thought in the years since our marriage imploded. He was right in his observations. Tilly was an impressive woman. She'd also gutted me, and it took a couple of years of therapy for me to realize that I was better without the doubt she brought to my life. A partner is supposed to make things easier, smoother, lift you up. Doubt in a partner is insidious. It poisons every moment, adding stress instead of taking it away. I couldn't live with that, and my grief at losing my marriage kept me from seeing that truth for a while. But once I saw it, I felt so much peace. I shrugged. We just weren't the right partners for each other. I like to think that I'd fight to keep someone like that, not throw her aside. Well, I hope you never have to do that, Bob. He shook his head. He didn't get it either. I smiled and drank my beer. They were better fit than Tilly and I had ever been. That thought didn't bother me. I was over Tilly, and I was glad she was over me. Despite the pain I'd felt at her betrayal, I didn't want her to suffer. She didn't mean to hurt me. She really was just the wrong partner for me. Besides, I had something of a secret. I met Deirdre, D, about 9 months before. I'd been doing a little self-improvement since the divorce, taking cooking classes, joining a book club, and I'd bought a road bike for cycling. Dee and I met on a group ride, and we rode at about the same pace, so we spent most of that ride together. We sat next to each other at the coffee that NC tried, and then did it again 2 weeks later. She was witty and well-informed on a lot of things that interested me too, so I asked her to join me for a stroll around the art museum, and then lunch the following Sunday. That led to dinners, movies, and, after 5 evening dates, sex. Really good sex. Dee was a project manager for Verizon, divorced 6 years with a 10-year-old daughter, which put Nadine between Annie and Kiley. Tall and thin, Dee usually bubbled with playful energy, but she was all business when it was time to get something done. As you'd expect from a project manager who was mostly a single mother, her ex had Nadine every other weekend. She was hyper-organized and a little bossy. We shared a surprising number of interests. Both of our playlists featured The Strokes and Muse. Pulp Fiction was at the top of our best movies list. I liked it for Willem Dafoe, but Dee was all about Uma Thurman, and we were pragmatically progressive politically. We live in Minnesota after all. When we were together we found that time passed without us noticing. And we were both sticklers for monogamy. We'd been keeping a low profile, mainly to make sure we were compatible before involving the kids. I don't know how long Tilly had been seeing Bob before she introduced him to the girls, but I wanted to be sure that Dee and I were destined for a long relationship before taking that step. And we were almost there. Dee and I had driven up to Duluth to meet my folks at their summer cottage a couple weeks before. She charmed them, and we left feeling very supported. We didn't want to steal any thunder from Kylie's birthday, so we decided to wait until next week to break the news to our daughters. We weren't sure when we'd do the in-person meeting, but it wouldn't be too much longer after that. And then, who really knew exactly? The ending of my marriage to Tilly sucked as badly as I feared, but I felt both stronger and wiser on the other side of that terrible journey. I felt secure and completely grounded with Dee. No matter which angle I use, when I looked at our relationship it was true, in balance. And I like the odds of keeping it that way. Regret really does come late, doesn't it? Well, that's all for today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you in the next video.